Test, test, test.
Speak? Oh, you can hear me. Okay, super. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and esteemed panelists, good morning. I'm honored to serve today as your moderator for this session, aiming to facilitate a thought-provoking and engaging discussion among our esteemed panelists. My name is Nouran Atif. I am the Africa and Middle East Regional Lead
Bonjour,
at the United Nations
je
Environment
m'appelle
Program
Nour.
Finance Initiative, UNEP-FI. And it is
Je
my great
travaille
pleasure to welcome you all to this panel session focusing
le
on the
programme
critical topic
MENACW
Unlocking Finance for City-Scale
d'Afrique
Transformation through Multi-Level
et
Governance.
Golfe.
Today, through this session, we will delve into the challenges and
Donc, on va
opportunities
discuter
of financing large-scale initiatives
pour le-
aimed at transforming cities in the Middle East and North Africa region,
pour le
and the
grand
pivotal role that multi-governance and financing
projet.
plays in achieving this goal.
Et c'est
As we
quoi
all
le
know, cities are at the forefront of the battle against climate change
C'est quoi
impacts. The MENA region,
le
with its
problème
rapidly growing urban centers, faces
dans
unique
la-
complex challenges,
des pays?
ranging from population growth, urbanization, to resource scarcity and climate vulnerability. However, within these challenges, immense opportunities for innovative solutions and sustainable actions are presented. Today, we will focus on the crucial aspect of financing
C'est quoi le
city-scale
défi
action across selected
changement
sectors. We will
climatique-
explore how
climatique?
finance can be made available and accessible to support these transformational
Et c'est quoi
efforts.
les
We will examine
solutions?
successful examples and case studies from the MENA region, highlighting initiatives that have
C'est quoi
effectively
les
mobilized
solutions
financial resources for
pour cette,
implementing climate
sujet?
action plans and national policies such as the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, and national adaptation plans. One key aspect we will emphasize is the role of multi-level governance in facilitating and supporting these finance mechanisms. Local and subnational government actors play a pivotal role in driving climate action at city
Donc,
level
va
and
par
supporting
le
national governments in
doublant
achieving
de-
their sustainability targets.
Gouvernement.
They are the ones who understand the specific challenges faced by these cities, and they possess local knowledge and expertise required to identify appropriate financing strategies. Throughout this panel session,
Donc,
we
il
will be
faut-
joined by esteemed experts
Il faut il y a
and
un-
practitioners who have first-hand
des stratégies
experience in implementing transformative projects
pour,
and initiatives in the region. They will share their insights, challenges, and success stories, shedding
pour
light on
cet,
strategies and mechanisms they have
sujet de la
employed to secure financing for city-scale
climatique.
transformations. We will learn about innovative approaches, public-private partnerships,
On va
and
prendre,
international cooperation models that have proven effective in unlocking finance for sustainable urban development. Moreover, we will explore the urgency of climate action in the region. The cities in the MENA are grappling with impacts of
On va
climate
parler
change,
de
such as water
moyens
scarcity, as mentioned, droughts,
créatifs.
rising sea level, and extreme heat and energy demands. It is essential that we understand the imperative for
Il y a
immediate action as a
beaucoup de
matter of
choses
urgency
pour,
and implementing innovative solutions to mitigate and adapt
pour
to
le
the
climat.
changing climate. By the end of our time together, in this session.
beaucoup de
We hope
solutions.
that you will have gained a deeper understanding
Qu'est-ce
of the nature of our topic today, and
fait
that we
de
will leave
la
equipped with a
climat?
fresh perspective and actionable insights. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome to the podium Ms. Chitembo Kawimbe
Je
Chunga,
veux
Adaptation
dire
Specialist
bienvenue
Consultant at the Climate
chez nous.
Investment Fund, to provide us with her opening remarks.
Madame Chunga.
Good morning, and thank you so much for
Va parler
inviting
de
us to
cette,
this very interesting session, discussing one of the
sujet.
key issues, key areas
Merci.
for advancing climate change
Merci
and
bien
adaptation.
beaucoup.
I just want to first start by mentioning what the climate investment funds are. We are the largest source of concessional climate finance to 6 multilateral development banks to pilot at scale innovative investments that address frontier
Je veux
climate
parler
challenges.
avec des
And
problèmes,
cities climate finance
les
is one such
changements
challenge.
climatiques,
Our added value in our approach of
Et
bringing these 6
changement
multilateral
climatique
development banks
de
together to coordinate and collaborate
pays.
efforts in country and in support of a country-led and country-owned investment plan. We are currently capitalized at nearly $12 billion US, with over 400 operations across the developing countries in the world. With proven success in scaling up renewable energy, adaptation and resilience
utiliser 1
programs,
milliard,
nature-based solutions,
pour
and
les
supporting
pays.
co-transition. Now, our focus is turning to supporting,
On va discuter
to supporting
des
cities.
efforts
And this is
des
where we
pays.
want to ensure that we collaborate and make a big difference. How are we going to do that? So we have the SIF's Climate Smart Urbanization Program, aiming to demonstrate a scalable
Nous
and
faisons
replicable
la
climate
différence,
smart model of urban development. That urban development must be connected, coordinated,
différence
and
de
compact,
climat.
and purposely
climatique.
designed for 20 small to medium scale sized, fast-growing cities poised for tomorrow's mega cities. It could be small today, but we know
Et en
tomorrow it's
fait,
going to host over millions of people. And
si
so
c'est
we are
pour,
interested in ensuring that that development is climate smart
Pour
and
le
responsive.
pays,
So these cities, we understand that the urban infrastructure is not
le
yet locked
petit
in.
pays,
And
pour,
60% of the land
sera
in those cities is still underutilized. So we expect this to happen throughout 2030.
donc
So we
il y a
provide
60%
concessional finance in cities with significant
pour-
infrastructure deficits,
60%
credit,
de la terre
worthiness, and
dans cet
bankability
pays
challenges,
est ne pas utilisée.
and limited ability to attract private finance. So we are geared through this program to address those challenges. And then we'll be supporting a very comprehensive package, from diagnostics to planning
On va parler
to financing the investments
pour
at
le-
scale, and through the multilateral development banks
En
as our
face.
great partners.
Structure
We aim to leverage their
Et
already existing diagnostics. That is
donner
whether
le
they have national adaptation plans,
chance
NDCs in place, national
pour,
plans which address city issues. We do not want to start from scratch. We need to work with the countries and with the
des
cities on what is already
partenaires.
there. And there are examples of such efforts
le
already.
travail
Like by the World Bank Gap Fund,
va pris
the EBRD
de la zéro.
Green City Program,
Donc
the Asian Development
il y a
Bank
beaucoup de programmes.
Sustainable Cities. Those are examples that we
pays
want to leverage on, and will continue to do so. And recommendations to
green
target
pays.
cities that are well positioned to benefit from this program. We offer scaled and programmatic
Le vert
interventions
pays
focused on
est-
both adaptation and mitigation. And some of the challenges that we need to do is to identify the barriers to finance by the cities themselves, policy issues that deter them from attracting finance,
Donc
regulatory
on va
issues,
parler avec,
and planning outreach,
on va
to mention
parler
but a
de-
few.
des
And what are
effets
those possible areas that we'll be
secondaires
financing in these cities? Green and
Et
resource
qu'est-ce qu'on a
efficient improvements in new
fait
or
dans
old
cet
buildings
pays?
where we do retrofitting. Reducing the energy footprint in water supply and ensuring there's a resilient water supply to cities. Promoting low carbon mobility across the cities. Enhancing alignment of spatial and infrastructure development. green infrastructure design interventions, integrated solid waste management. These are
Donc,
not
on va
cast in
trouver
concrete. We'll be financing anything that is going to ensure that we
on
promote our cities to
retrouve
develop on a
des
low
effets
carbon
carbone
footprint and a resilient development pathway. The context within where the city is will matter where the financing goes. So we aim to launch this program next year once we have sufficient funds up to the range of $500 million US or $200 million US.
On a
We want to
50
demonstrate the
millions
best
de dollars
practices in ensuring finance gets to the cities, and then we are able to replicate this
pour
to add to the rest of the
prix
world.
de cet
And in setting out this endeavor,
projet.
we are eager to work with everybody to
Et-
collaborate and coordinate. I'll end there for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Tout le billet.
Chitembo, for
va
those
travailler avec
amazing
tous.
remarks. And I really like
Merci.
that you
Merci beaucoup.
emphasize the need for coordination and collaboration,
Pour qu'est-ce que
and
vous
the
parlez.
fact that cities are growing, so we also have to keep an eye on what's going to be happening later
en
on
fait,
and how we can ensure sustainability
billets
of our efforts,
sera
and definitely not starting from
grand
scratch,
billet.
so that we want to build on the existing national plans as
Donc,
well, and how we can tie things together and align with those
Donc, pas près
efforts.
dans le
So
zéro.
I think with that, we shall start and embark on our session. And allow me first to introduce our esteemed and distinguished panel speakers. We have the pleasure to have with us Ms. Nesrine Dawood, Manager of Sustainable Development and Amman Resilience Unit in Jordan.
Chef de
Ms. Firdaus Usidum,
développement.
Special Advisor to the Secretary General at the United Cities and Local Governments, and Ms. Jamila Almir, Senior Advisor to the UNFCCC High-Level Champions Team. And we're also having the pleasure to have with us Mr. John Karkau, Senior Urban Development Specialist from the World Bank Group. Mr. Dr. Muhammad Al-Harashi, Cities and Villages Development Bank in Jordan.
Thank you.
Et Monsieur
Thank you so
Mohamed.
much for being here with us. And I think let's start our first question with shedding
à
light
tous.
on the good case practices and the existing models that are available. So Amman has a resilience strategy and a process for its adoption that includes multiple analysis and assessment steps that was put into place to reach it. So would you please share with us, from your perspective and from your experience, the success story of course, Amman, highlighting the challenges, strategies, and the mechanisms employed to secure financing this transformation, and particularly the cooperation models between the different government actors, private institutions, and even international cooperations.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me here. Amman in the past few years faced a lot of challenges related to climate change, whether it's changing and irregular rain patterns, high temperature, low temperature in winter, freezing and blizzards, flash floods, and a lot of other challenges. This drives us to address these challenges. We started in 2017 with our resilience strategy. As you mentioned, we did an assessment on the city level for the first time on whether we are actually resilient, as we say, or we need a lot of work to do. So we came up with a resilience strategy, and part of it, one of the main pillars, is working on our environmental issues. This led us to work on our climate action plan that was released in 2019. The climate action plan also consisted of an citywide assessment and inventory. For the first time, we prepared a climate data inventory for Amman. But when we started to implement the climate action plan, We
fait
had
le bilan et
intermediate goal and a
l'évaluation
long-term goal to reduce 40% of our greenhouse gases by 2030 and to
de
reach
ce
the zero
problème
carbon by 2050. Yet it was really challenging for us to
pour
implement this plan. There was a lot of aspects to take into consideration, maybe financial, maybe
réduire le gaz.
legislations, or even the capacity, the technical capacity of the municipality. This led us, with the support of EBRD, to have action plan. We called it the Green City Action Plan as part of the Green City program funded by the EBRD. What we did is we prioritized the actions that was listed on both the resilience strategy, the climate action plan, and the GAM strategy that is linked with the budget. And we prioritized the action, and we suggested new actions according to the new situation, especially after the COVID-19. So the Green City Action Plan had 37 short-term actions that will help us to reduce 40% of the greenhouse gases by 2030. All of our actions have the same priorities. The first one on energy and buildings, transportation, waste management, water management, land use and urban planning. And the climate change is cross-cutting between all these priorities. In the past few years, we implemented several projects in these pillars, whether the first public transportation system, Amman BRT, is under experimental operation now, and it shows a lot of success. We have on the waste management for example, the biogas project, we produce around 40% of our needs from waste to energy project. We work on flash flooding with the support of the UN Habitat and UNDP. We did a flooding assessment for Amman, where we specified 120 high-risk locations to flooding. And now we are implementing, one location is already implemented. And we are working on these these locations. We try to use nature-based solutions in these locations because we knew that this is the right way to address these challenges. How do we implement this project financially? Either on a GAM budget, or we try to seek the support of our partners. When we have a good, solid plan, a lot of donors agencies would like to support us because our plans are science-based and data-based plans. We try to apply for green funds, but one of our challenges is the public-private partnership. We still need a lot of things to do on this aspect. So this is the situation in Amman.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And I really like the phased approach that you've taken also in implementation, understanding that these things do take time and a lot of efforts in the implementation. And great strides. Congratulations to Amman.
Thank you.
And if I now can go to Firdaus, if I can ask you, given what was also shared, how should climate action planning programs across the MENA region be best shaped to support the growth of a strong pipeline of climate investment opportunities? How can we make sure we are engaging all the relevant actors to work collaboratively in alignment also with the national plans, and so as was just alluded to?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Actually, I would like first to thank the organizers for inviting UCLG to this important session, because unlocking finances is like the key driver for every and single work we do on policies into the organization, and it's so critical for the cities. I would like to bring it in 4 big pillars. Unlocking finances first for us and the foremost, because this is what we hear from the local government around the world, and especially from this MENA region, is the capacity building, but not the capacity building only for experts to be able to build projects that will generate and attract project. It is, what we hear is about a capacity building for readiness for cities, for the readiness of cities to face all the consequences that the climate change is bringing to the world and to the region especially. And we are in a region that is especially impacted by the velocity of the climate change, because it has already an extreme kind of weather and climate situation. Without talking about the kind of conflict that are hitting again also the whole region, and we need to address that as well as part of the climate change. So I think there is, in all the regions of the world, it is important to see what has the world to win from each of the regions. And I think that resilience is something that really clearly the world should be looking at when looking at the MENA region. Because there is a capacity to be resilient in facing the extreme weathers and facing the extreme difficulties that this region is facing. So I think this is the first thing and the foremost. The second one is accessibility. And we can talk about accessibility to finances. It is easy to say it this way. We can talk about the direct access to funds through cooperation, the indirect access to funds through the national level and the global level, talking about the NDCs, talking about the national banks. But however, what seems the most important for us when we hear the local government is talking about complementarity. So we can talk about horizontal complementarity, cooperation between cities, between national banks, to support green projects, to support a green territorial vision on planning, to support different infrastructure, as our first speaker was rightly saying. But it is very important to put at the center of this access those that have not been able to join and to reach those finances. So we can talk about the big cities. It is easier, a lot easier for them to reach out to those funds. But I would like to highlight the presence and the existence of the intermediary cities. And not only because they don't have such a big access to funds, but because they are the key lever where the climate change will be able to be fought or not. They have this link to the hinterland, to the rural world. They have the link to a lot of half of the population around the world. And I think that unlocking the city-scale transformation needs to go through intermediary cities. And the third point is about transforming our models of financing. When we hear the local government, especially in the intermediary cities, they say that they have not been able to reach those funds. They don't know where they are. They don't know how to reach them. And if we really need, if you really want a resilience and a climate change fight to happen in the right way, we need the model to be transformed. And for the model to be transformed, we need the finances to support the transformation of this model. And this is, and from the ground, and not from theories. From the ground, listening to the local government, listening to what is happening on the ground, listening to the needs of the people and communities, and then we will be able to have a true transformation of the model, and we hope and ask the finance system to support the transformation, and not coming back with the same funds where we don't see it happening at local level. We don't see the efficiency of these funds at the local level, and this is a key stake for us. The fourth thing is inequalities. For us, the question of climate justice, just in the sense of coming back to the accessibility, is making and ensuring that the communities and population have access to climate-friendly policies. And this is completely linked to the kind of policies that are generated at local, national, and global level. And this is where this complementarity needs to be built between the three of them. So yes, multi-level, yes, the NDCs, yes, the national banks, they are key. However, we need an alignment between the policies generated at global level, the policies that will be brought to the territories at national level through the banks, and all of them need to answer the needs of the communities. This is the key thing, because the first consumer and the first one that can help and accelerate this fight we are in and this emergency we are in is the population, the people. So this is where we need to bring our efforts and the funds especially.
Absolutely. I like the leaving no one behind approach.
Absolutely.
To the efforts, looking from capacity building, working from the ground up, and also ensuring alignment. And I think alignment is a key element or a key aspect of a successful planning for cities as well. So Jamila, with what was mentioned also, if you can share with us some insights on the gaps and the barriers that currently hinder the flow of climate finance for city-scale transformation in the MENA, and how do these challenges differ in the MENA from other regions as well? I think if you speak again, it might be working now.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Yes. I think, so there has been a lot already said, but I think I would like to start bottom up. So what can cities actually do for themselves before going externally? And I'll use Dubai, where I used to work previously. I'm still there, but no longer working for the Dubai government, as an example. I think Dubai started its climate journey in the mid-2005, around 2005, and then launched its carbon abatement strategy end of 2015. And really local governance, bringing the players that have an impact that can deliver is a huge game changer. Just understanding where your emissions are coming from, who has impact, and then working together. So the Dubai Supreme Council of Energy was formed, and on the board you see the Road and Transport Authority, the municipality, which gathers waste and wastewater, etc., which are the usual municipal services that any city has to operate, which is where most of the city budget goes to anyway. And a lot of times when we look at how we distribute our local budgets, you prioritize by needs, right? Education, basic infrastructure, etc. But I think one of the things that we are starting to do but can improve more in the MENA region is directly link these day-to-day basic services to climate impacts. Okay, so this is just internal alignment, and that requires capacity building. And then automatically when you have a local champion that links these infrastructure delivery projects and links them to budget requests, it directly goes to the budget that is within your hand. So this is step one, which is internal homework. It requires capacity, but is something that is within the control of cities. The next step requires unlocking additional finance. You both spoke, both Nasreen and Firda spoke about partnership with private sector. And sometimes there are blocking points, which is like local policy guaranteeing the rights of private sector partnering with public sector. Again, Dubai introduced a public-private partnership policy that guarantees the requirements. Now, Dubai is a bit special, and I think the UAE is a bit special because most cities are also states. So they have regulatory powers, and this doesn't apply in the case of intermediary cities where Firdaus is talking. And the only solution to solve the intermediary cities problem, and I'd like Firdaus to add to that, is probably having this champion that has regulatory powers that can then open these doors. And linking back to regulatory powers, you can never unlock additional finance if you don't create the market mechanisms. Again, going back to Dubai and looking at MENA, and if we look at waste, the MENA region, most of the waste is sent to landfill. most of them informal landfills. And out of all the MENA countries, less than 10 cities have waste fees that bring waste management to a break-even, even a break-even. So you can imagine the budget that is absorbed just by waste management. Now, I understand there are implications on cost of living, but oftentimes it's not that bad. So cities or regulatory authorities, subnational regulatory authorities, have to look at these win-win situations where you save additional budget from government and also create opportunities for private sector to step in. And this applies to waste energy. I think Jordan has done amazing work with decentralized renewable energy. I think you're a regional leader in that, together with Morocco, and hopefully this trickles down to the rest of the MENA region because we're blessed with a lot of sun. Wastewater as well. I mean, the first crash course you take in environmental studies is trash is cash, and I think we're not applying it in our local policies. So really unlocking these business cases. So this is the second point of homework that we have to do. The third homework, and when I was in Dubai government, we worked very closely with C40. C40 have created this task force on green finance, and what was, I think, not evident at all and is now becoming very evident in Europe because they have this national and EU policy for climate change is the literacy of the finance people in subnational governments. And when you make sure that the finance team has this climate literacy, they then become advocates as well, as opposed to becoming reluctant. Okay, why do you want to introduce this climate project now? We're barely meeting our infrastructure project. But when we've done our homework of aligning our basic infrastructure needs with climate impacts, infrastructure mitigation and adaptation, we should not forget adaptation, and the finance people speak the same language, it becomes much easier. The last point I do want to add is creating these dialogues with national governments. And again, I'll go back to the MEE, and I think the ministry has done a good job in creating these dialogues. And I think in the region, we've moved from a very formal setup of working with government and now more and more to a much more informal setup where you have roundtables with private sector, you have roundtables with NGO players, you have roundtables with subnational governments, and this is a huge power. I think we underestimate it. But now there are these national dialogues for climate where the ministry convenes by sector, the municipality representatives with the sectoral representatives to talk about how we could deliver on our net zero commitments. And this is very powerful because then it shapes policy, it shapes financial asks, etc.
I couldn't agree more. I think having this dialogue is very important. Otherwise, we'll end up with silos between what is actually needed and what is being implemented on ground. So I see alignment as a recurring theme across all the answers as well in partnerships. So now that we've seen good case practices and examples of what is happening in cities, if we want to also direct our attention to the implementing agency and see how we can respond to these elements. So John, I would direct my next question to you. So based on your expertise and experience, what recommendations would you have for addressing all these identified gaps and barriers in climate finance in the region, and how can multi-level governance systems play a role in overcoming these challenges? Why is it urgent to address city-level resilience and action against climate change?
Well, thank you for that question. I really like the conversation so far. We spoke about capacity, leadership, services, ambition, right? Trying to go to net zero. And cities have a very, very big role to play. In MENA, the largest cities in MENA tend to hold an outsized share of not just populations, but also the urban economy. Right? In Jordan, for example, Amman itself, it accounts for 70% of the country's GDP. So fixing some of these cities in MENA will be very, very important, not just for climate change, because cities actually
70%
produce most of the GHG gases. 70% of GHG is from urban areas. So the whole idea of cities taking leadership in not just adaptation, but resilience and mitigations, it is very important. And you mentioned that trash is cash, but I would also argue that in MENA, land is cash. You see a lot of sprawl in MENA. All the cities are sprawling. They are very disconnected. And that creates a problem because when you have sprawl and you don't use land efficiently, it creates a lot of cost. That brings down your city finances. It constrains your city finances. if you have too much vacant land, under leveraged land, that are not put to good use,
Laetitia,
that impacts
c'est
also livability. You're not
de
able to
l'argent.
attract private sector investments. It's
Donc,
almost, the
si
whole
vous
idea of
avez
city
quelque
forms
chose,
is very important. So even if you have investments, for example, green investments in
vous connaissez quand
things like intra-city
tu utilisais.
transportation, you also need to complement them with land use reforms. I argue that land use needs to be more responsive to market needs, responsive to the needs of housing,
Donc,
provide affordable housing, provide land for
changer de la
businesses,
terre.
for commercial zones, industrial, and so on, in a more efficient way, right? So really thinking about the land dimension, the reforms that needs to come with spatial planning and integrated spatial planning. We're no longer in the time where we can basically look at sector by sector interventions, but we need to come from a very integrated way, looking at spatially integrated solutions if you want to reach the net zero targets that, for example, Arman is looking at. This has to be very, very targeted and integrated. The next point I want to make is on finance. I think someone mentioned that we just have to look at cities where these sources of finance are. Again, if we go back to land, you can think a lot about land-based financing, right? Land-based financing can help with programs like green buildings, and many cities around the world have successfully used that. In Singapore, in Korea, a lot of the green spaces and the types of green buildings, they're not actually financed by governments, they're financed by private sector. So really looking to use land, capturing its values, and again going back to the need for land use reforms, that allows you to unlock some of the legislative tools or instruments that allow you to capture some of this value will be really, really important. And also making your systems more efficient. In solid waste management, if the city is not managing solid waste well and not really recovering a lot of costs, it's really difficult to do PPPs or private sector to come in when this inefficiency exists. You need to get some of these services to a level of efficiency to be able to attract private financing. And lastly, I think the whole idea of having private sector come in is extremely important.
S'il y a cette chose,
again, going back to services, to the green buildings, for instance, these have to come in with the private sector experience. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we've established that there is a need for the private sector to be engaged on all sustainability efforts, because public finance alone is going to be insufficient, and there has to be an absolute direct involvement in that. But thank you so much for all your insights. They're very informative in the discussion of the integration and understanding better on the impacts and all of that. I think that's an excellent point to make. Dr. Mohammed Al-Harashi and two colleagues, I will shift my next question to Arabic, so should you require any simultaneous translation, please use your phone. دكتور محمد، من رأي حضرتك ما هي الفرص الغير مستغلة لدعم تمويل المناخ في المنطقة وتحديدا للتحول على مستوى المدن؟ وما هي أنواع الشراكات والتعاون متعدد المستويات اللازمة لتوفير هذه الفرص بشكل فعال وضمان تنفيذها المستدام؟
الله يمسيكم بالخير جميعا، أسعد الله مساءكم. طبعا راح أتحدث بعجالة عن بنك تنمية المدن والقرى. هو بنك مؤسسة حكومية متخصصة معنية بتمويل وإدارة ودائع البلديات في المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، عددها حوالي 100 بلدية. نقوم بإدارة وتمويل جميع ودائع البلديات باستثناء أمانة عمان الكبرى، طبعا استثناء لأنهم مشاريعهم موازنتهم مختلفة تماما. البنك يقدم التمويل للمشاريع البنية التحتية والمشاريع الاستثمارية. طبعا تماشيا مع التوجهات الحكومة والأهداف الوطنية العليا فيما يتعلق بالتغير المناخي. نعم. قامت الحكومة بإسناد دور لبنك تنمية المدن والقرى من خلال وزارة البيئة، بادر البنك بالطلب من صندوق المناخ الأخضر للاعتماد قبل عامين تقريبا. وضع الصندوق حوالي 19 مؤشر، منها مؤشرات مالية ومؤشرات الحوكمة وما إلى ذلك، وقد بادر البنك بالتسجيل وتحقيق هذه المعايير والمؤشرات، وأنجزنا المرحلة الأولى، ثم انتقلنا إلى المرحلة الثانية، ثم كان هناك حوالي 14 معيار ومؤشر مالي وحوكمة، واستطعنا أن ننجز كل هذه المؤشرات والحمد لله. عام 2024 سيتم اعتماد بنك تنمية المدن والقرى كأول مؤسسة حكومية في الشرق الأوسط. طبعا تقوم هي كمنصة تمويلية ما بين القطاع الخاص والبلديات من خلال دعم. طبعا وضعت شروط ومعايير كثيرة في تعديل قانون البنك والمعايير الحوكمة. تم تغيير قانون البنك، وأيضا هيكل مجلس الإدارة تم تغييره، وكان هناك أيضا متطلبات أخرى. أنشأنا مرصد البلدي. المرصد البلدي هذا حصر جميع ممتلكات البلديات وأصولها وأقام عليها مشاريع. بدأنا مع 3 بلديات والحمد لله رب العالمين في الطاقة المتجددة للخلايا الشمسية. كانت تستنزف فاتورة الطاقة في هذه البلديات حوالي 20% من نفقات البلدية، الآن أصبح زيرو والحمد لله رب العالمين في هذه البلديات. يعني وإحنا ماشيين في برنامج أنه لل100 بلدية بعون الله تعالى راح يكون عام 2025 سينتهي من هذا البرنامج. المرصد البلدي بعد حصره لجميع الممتلكات والأصول أيضا راح يستثمرها في تغير الطاقة. المرحلة الأخرى اللي عام 2024 سنصدر أول سند أخضر بهدف حشد المدخرات وإعادة توظيفها في التنمية المحلية المستدامة لجميع البلديات. أيضا من شروط الصندوق كان علينا اللي هو إنشاء وحدة تكافؤ الفرص، وأنشأنا وحدة تكافؤ الفرص وبناء القدرات للموظفين وكوادر البنك، وانتقلنا إلى مرحلة البلديات وأنشأنا وحدة تمكين للمرأة في كل بلدية. الآن صرنا منشئين حوالي 35 وحدة تمكين للمرأة. باقي البلديات ضمن جدول زمني سينتهي عام 25 بعون الله تعالى لانخراط المرأة وإدماجها في عمليات والاستثمار في التنمية في قطاع البلديات. طبعا قلت كما تحدثت في عام 2024 بعد إصدار السندات الخضراء بعون الله تعالى هناك مشاريع راح تكون دعم شراكة ما بين القطاع العام والبلديات، عفوا القطاع الخاص والبلديات، لأن البلديات في الفترة السابقة صراحة فشلت كثير من الاستثمارات. احنا مولنا استثمارات ضخمة جدا مع البلديات، وتعرف القطاع العام لا يستطيع إدارة المشاريع بكفاءة، ولذلك من شروط الآن تمويلنا اللي هو دعم الشراكة ما بين القطاع العام والخاص، 51 للقطاع الخاص و49 للبلديات. طبعا هناك مشاريع كثيرة ابتكارية تقدمت فيها عدة جهات، وخاصة فيما يتعلق بالنفايات وتدوير النفايات. معظم البلديات الآن النفايات صراحة فاتورة الكلفة عليها عالية جدا لأنها تقوم بعمليات الحفر والطمر، لكن احنا سننتقل إلى مرحلة تقدم. لدينا شركات حوالي 3-4 شركات الآن موجودة، وعملنا الدراسات وقدمت لنا دراسات جدوى اقتصادية مفيدة جدا اللي عملية التقطير. سيتم استثمار النفايات، وهي نقل تجربة تركيا في هذا الإطار، حيث تركيا أضافت إلى الناتج الإجمالي المحلي ما تقريبا 182 مليار من استثمارها للنفايات، وهي التجربة نقلت لنا إياها بعض الشركات، وإن شاء الله راح يتم استثمارها في الأردن. وهي التوجهات على المدى قصير الأجل، لكن هناك توجهات على طويلة الأمد مع البلديات في مشاريع الشراكة بعون الله تعالى، المشاريع التي تراعي التغير المناخي. يوجد في البنك أيضا عندنا صندوق تنمية المحافظات. احنا بنمول جميع المشاريع خارج حدود العاصمة باستثناء أمانة عمان الكبرى ما نمولهم لأنه فيها ازدحام سكاني ضخم جدا، ونحاول نستهدف المناطق الأقل حظا أساس ما تكون في هجرة عكسية باتجاه العاصمة. نحاول إنه طبعا أوكي مولنا حوالي 96 مشروع للاسف لانه مولنا الدايركت مع القطاع مع بعض البلديات كان هناك في فشل فيها وتعثر حوالي 26 مشروع. الان عندنا تقييم ضمن سياسه منهجيه وائتمانيه جديده عندنا.
Sorry, the translation, the simultaneous translation is not working, so they cannot hear the English translation. معلش بعتذر، الترجمة الفورية بس مش شغالة، فالزملاء مش سامعين اللي بيتقال.
اوكي.
Is it working now? No, still.
Test.
It's working for you all.
It's good now.
معلش بعتذر، وهنا كمان برضو shall we try؟ ممكن نحاول نجرب نشوف الترجمة شغالة ولا لا. معلش بنعتذر على المقاطعة.
لا بسيطة.
اوكي تفضل حضرتك.
طبعا يوجد لدينا صندوق اللي هو تنمية المحافظات كما تحدثت، يمول المشاريع اللي تكون خارج حدود العاصمة ويستهدف الأقل حظا والمناطق الفقيرة من أجل رفع سوية هذه المناطق، وفيها خاصة في موضوع الفقر والبطالة لأنه تكون موجودة بشكل هائل جدا في الأطراف، ولذلك هذا الصندوق يمول المشاريع الريادية التي تراعي تغير المناخ، ومولنا حوالي 96 مشروع تعثر منها 96 مشروع. عندنا إطلاق سياسة ائتمانية منضبطة ضمن ضمانات جديدة، ونطمح بالمستقبل إن شاء الله أنه نعمل على مشروع له تدوير النفايات بطريقة التقطير وليس بطريقة الحفر والطمر النفايات كما هو الآن معمول فيها.
أظن أن ده يعني مثال جيد جدا على أولا الشراكات والموائمة والتنسيق ما بين القطاعات المختلفة ودعم الشراكة، وطبعا وجود المؤشرات المالية ومؤشرات الحوكمة ده شيء مهم جدا علشان يكون في تنسيق ما بين المستويات المختلفة من الإدارة ومن مبروك برضو على يعني بحيي المجهودات البنك عملها. For the next segment, so now that we've heard from all our panelists, we also want to take a quick round and discuss with you like some of the interactions with each other. So I'm going to be addressing questions to perhaps multiple of you at the same time. But Nisreen, let me get back to you again. So if we can go to see how the climate action planning programs in the MENA can, sorry, I think the question it's I think I flipped the page by mistake.
Poser des questions pour vous.
So yes, how can the climate action planning programs across the MENA be best shaped to support the growth of a strong pipeline of climate investment opportunities, and how can expectations be bridged and risk-sharing mechanisms be developed to overcome the deployment barriers?
What we did in Amman to make sure that our plans are implemented, we aligned our plan with the national level. The climate change portfolio for Jordan is under the responsibility of the Ministry of Environment. So the Ministry of Environment did all the work that is related to climate change. They monitor our commitments as a country and now as a city. So the climate action plan is aligned with the national climate change policy. And to ensure that this, the Ministry of Environment launched the updated climate change policy last year, along with the updated NDCs and the communication for Jordan. So now we are in the process of updating our climate action plan to make sure that is aligned with the national goals. And 42% of Jordan are in Amman, so whatever we do as a city affects the national level. So we need to work together, and this is what we do on the ground with the Ministry of Environment. Also in Jordan, we have the National Climate Change Committee. That there are representatives from all the related organizations on the national level and on the local level. So we work together in this aspect specifically. And also on the city level, the Climate Action Plan is an input for the updated strategy. We have Amman Strategy 22-26. It's updated yearly. So the outcome of the Climate Action Plan is an input on the Amman strategy to make sure that is aligned with GAM budget as well. And all the work, all the high priority actions that need to be implemented through our own budget in case we didn't secure a fund or support from other agencies.
Thank you so much for that. And
de bonnes routes.
I think for my next
Merci
question,
Nesrine.
I would direct to you, Chitambe, if I can ask you on what types of financing instruments are most attractive to investors, public and private, of course, and which are the easiest to access and more attractive to use for cities?
Yeah, thanks for that question. First and foremost, what attracts cities or even governments to finance, it has to be predictable, it has to be very, very low cost, it has to be flexible, and it's something that can be scaled up. There should be additionality from the initial investments. So for cities and the challenges that are raised is for the bigger cities that have got federal government system, it is easy for them to get from any private sector. There's confidence in the private sector, by the private sector in those cities, so they can get financing from there as well. But for the low cities, where the majority of us will be living by the year 2050, those are cities that cannot attract private sector. So that is why you go in with low costs. You can do green bonds. There's now debt swap for nature. There are all these possible financing instruments that can be used. But complementarities amongst the funds, amongst the different types of financing tools, is what is going to really help unlock for those low-cost sectors. That the focus and the attention we're giving to them is because we know over 50%, over 2.5 billion people will be living in those cities, which will be mega cities then. So we need to ensure that we come up with those particular financing tools, which is very low-cost, predictable, flexible, and easily scalable for someone to put in.
That's a very good approach, and would be accessible also. So thank you so much for that insight. And now that we understand some of the situations and some of the opportunities that are available, to John and Dr. Muhammad, if I may ask, what technical assistance offering is available that you are providing to support sustainable and green cities development, whether to public actors, private actors, or even to engage the community itself of those cities to broaden the pipeline of investment and accelerate the transformation? So if John, and then we can hear from Dr. Muhammad.
Thank you for that question. So your question is really how to accelerate some of the initiatives, right, from both the public and private side. So the World Bank has two parts. I'm from the World Bank side that looks at support to the public sector. And then we have our colleagues from the IFC who work very closely with the private sector to accelerate some of these initiatives on climate. And in some cases, we work very closely together to find common solutions. And I think that's the case with Amman, where both the IFC and the World Bank is very active in really trying to find innovative solutions to accelerate to meet some of the targets that it has set out, ambitious targets that the city has set out itself to be, right? From the World Bank side, we have the traditional types of concessionary loans, whether it's results-based or project financing. And then we have also a lot of TAs, some of these funded by trust funds or gap fund, and we implement them. And one of the things we like to do is really to help cities prioritize what are the key investments that will make the most sense and to make the biggest dent in trying to achieve some of these targets without crowding out, say, the private sector and so on and so forth. So being very strategic, and whatever the World Bank finances is really just a drop in the bucket if you think about the bigger scheme of things, right? So we want to be very strategic in some of these tools. In terms of technical support, we are now trying to grow the bank. My colleagues are in Marrakesh having the annual meetings, and we'll soon hear about the new vision. We're not only looking at people, prosperity, and eliminating poverty, but we want to also look at the planet as a whole, public goods, creating new knowledge on how do we do things more innovatively and what are the possible solutions. And that means coming together both the bank, the IFC, even MEGA, to come up with more innovative financial products that can help focus the acceleration of solutions to meet some of these climate targets. So I'll stop here. I'm not sure if there's going to be any responses, but I'll be happy to have the conversation on this.
Dr. Mohammed.
طبعا في بنك تنمية المدن والقرى أنشأنا حديثا ضمن الهيكل التنظيمي مديرية جديدة سميناها تمكين البلديات. هاي البلدية فيها قسمين، قسم المرصد البلدي الذي قام بحصر جميع ممتلكات البلديات وأصولها وممتلكاتها، وقسم آخر متابعة والتقييم وتقييم دراسات الجدوى الاقتصادية. ليش؟ لأنه التجارب سابقة المشاريع اللي قمنا بتمويلها وحصل بها بعض الفشل وتعثرت، خلينا نقول مش يعني صار فيها تعثر كبير، هي نتيجة أنها جابت دراسات جدوى اقتصادية جاهزة من منظمة عندنا في الأردن اسمها إرادة، يعني جاهزة بيدفعوا لهم مبلغ معين ويعطوهم الدراسة جاهزة ويقدموها للبنك، واحنا ضمن هذه المعايير اعطيناهم ومنحناهم هذا القروض، ولكن للاسف تعثرت. لكن الان في انشا البنك اللي هو هذا القسم كبيت خبره لتقييم دراسه الجدوى الاقتصاديه، هل هي محايده؟ لازم يكون في محايده، ولا في كونفليكت ليست، ايضا في تضارب مصالح. فالبلديه كان حتى مهندسي البلديه كانوا هم اللي يعملوا دراسه الجدوى الاقتصاديه ويجيبوا لنا اياها، وعندما فورا يقول لك الاي ار ار عندي مرتفع، عندي 10 15%. زمان كانت السياسة الائتمانية نمنحهم هذا القرض، ولكن نكتشف بعد تقييم سنتين أو 3 4 أنه هذا فشل، وفشلت صراحة كثير من المشاريع. الآن مع إنشاء هذه الدائرة صراحة لا يمكن أنه تمر مرور الكرام، لازم يكون تقييم لهذه الدراسات. إذا لم تكن فعلا دقيقة وموضوعية ومنطقية لن يتم تقديم هذا المنح. أيضا صندوق المناخ الأخضر حتى للمشاريع التي تراعي التغير المناخي اشترط أن يكون من طرف محايد تكون دراسة الجدوى الاقتصادية، وإحنا عاملين بهذا الاتجاه. وهناك دراسات كثيرة جدا الآن عملت على مشاريع متعددة وهي في طور التمويل إن شاء الله، وهذا ما نقوم في بنك التنمية إن شاء الله.
This is a great example of also seeing how we coordinate the approaches and the way that the finance can be accessed as well. And I also really liked, John, when you mentioned the collaboration between IFC and the World Bank as well, and how you're both brought together to support on these implementation. I think also one of the important aspects especially for those private financing institutions is to make sure that we shift the narrative to understand that there is a need for this financing, that it's part of the business case, that it's not an add-on, and it's not something that we're doing as a green finance portfolio or a green finance part, that this is actually can be incorporated in the general financing that you would have for different topics, and especially also, Jamila, when you mentioned, because it's climate is a multi-sectoral approach. Like, you cannot go address it from just one sector, just one area. It affects several things, and one action can affect many of them. And speaking also of you, Jamila, and Firdaus also, I would like to address the next question to you. Now, speaking of that understanding and the need for scaling up the expertise and all that, how can we do actually scale up local expertise development and capacity and the capability on climate finance across the region? So Firdaus, if you would please start, and then Jamila, if you can come in.
Thank you.
Désolé pour cette
For me, as I was saying earlier,
comment vous
the key element is
la
the
question
human factor.
comment
And the human factor is not only about the general
qu'est-ce que vous
communities,
voulez
because even the decision makers
pour le
is part of this human factor.
climaté?
Decision makers, would they be local authorities, local government, decision makers in
Je pense
banks,
que
whatever you name it, from where you want to take it. But I think that the most important here is raising awareness of the people and raising awareness of the emergency we are living in. I think that this year especially, we had like one storm in 1 week doing you know, going around the world with the same floods and the same. It's like I felt it a little bit like COVID. The pandemic took us all of us in the same dynamic of being sick and finding in this unity a solution, and I felt it in the same way with this emergency that we lived, especially this summer. I believe that if we want the expertise, if we want the project to be really local efficient, because this is what we are looking for, I think there are two key levers. The first one is the fact of making it really geographically contextual regarding the solution. Being scalable, of course, but being local before and foremost everything. It has to be local. It has to be a local need. It has to be a local answer. And those that have the local knowledge, let's call it the soft knowledge, and not, you know, scientific have the hard knowledge. Let's talk about the soft knowledge a little bit. It is important to value this soft knowledge, and therefore scalability depends on the knowledge that is gathered and the data that is gathered at local level. So, of course, public-private partnerships, of course, being able to empower the local governance, and I think it is, I was really happy to hear the solutions that are brought from Jordan.
Je suis très content.
And what I think important also is that this scalability is taking into account the fact that at local level it's just about life. You were talking about multi-sectorial, yes, of course, but life is just one. The daily citizen, the citizens do not have a question whether this is energy, this is industry, this is, you know, they just unfold their daily life at local level, and having this approach of a whole comprehensive approach is key. And this is, the concept of this must be scaled up, I believe so. The second point I wanted to raise is also the fact that when we develop projects, not only they must be geographically contextual, but also they must be really supported by a direct connection between local and global, going through national. So we have been talking about aligning, but I think that the policies that will be developed and adapted to the local level must be aligned with what is happening at global level, because this is where unity resides, and we need this unity to answer this climate emergency.
Thank you so much, Firdaus, for that. And I think definitely tailoring and having contextualization and making it tangible also for people. I think with what we've seen from climate impacts the past period is that it's no longer something that's going to happen, it's already here. So it is. So I think that hopefully makes it easier moving forward. So, Jamila.
Thank you, Nuran. I'll build maybe on what Firdaus was saying to bring in another stakeholder. And I guess when we think of scaling, sometimes we think of a project and then scale it up. And I think what we can scale are models of cooperation. And one of the critical stakeholders that we often forget are the very little NGOs that work in our little towns in the Arab region, in the region. I was talking to one of the co-founders of the Arab Reform Initiative, and they did an open call to see how many CSOs, so civil society organizations, operate in the MENA region. And they had over 140, but sometimes it was one person or two people, right, working in an environment. And these people are very critical to support the local municipalities, the local little towns. I'm not talking about the big cities like Amman. And when we talk about finance, this is where, I mean, most of our discussion, if I went to I come from a tiny village in Lebanon, probably nobody would connect to what we're saying here today, because they were about wastewater, about irrigation, and most of the language we're talking is quite exclusive. And these little CSOs are our translators. And oftentimes they don't necessarily have, I mean, some of the donors give very big ticket, finance tickets. They're not accessible to little budgets. But then what we're seeing more and more are these innovative partnerships where you have big donors that have millions to donate, but then you have a local or a national entity that can then disperse it over, masalan, 10 little towns. And I think identifying these partnerships, being very proactive about creating them, with keeping in mind that we want to reach the little town, okay? Not keeping in mind, okay, I have 100 million for this region, who's my best partner to disperse it to, but really kind of looking at it impact-driven. This is from the financial institutions and national governments creating these partnerships for local and subnational impact. From the non-donor states, I think creating these platforms where there's capacity building within the CSO networks, and we were talking to the Arab Town organization that has over 200 Arab mayors in it. Their needs are very basic. We need capacity building on climate change in Arabic. You know, most of the forms that people have to fill in to get finance are in English, and you have a minimum of 20 to 25 pages. Really, you need the translators and building capacity so that they can then help access finance.
That's an absolutely excellent point. You leverage existing initiatives or existing platforms or areas where we can collaborate on, and especially because those entities, they have the direct knowledge on ground on what the challenges would be, so they would be able to directly access and tackle the issues needed. I think that's a very excellent point to put in mind. And before we reach the closing of our session, I'd like to have a very quick 1 minute, one sentence from each of you as the key takeaways or the key points, something that you would like to leave the audience with for today. So if you can go in order. So Chitambe, if you would start, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think something that the audience can go back with is, we've heard this morning, finance is there, but it needs complementarities and coherence amongst the various players. If we're going to ensure finance gets to the cities, we need all the players, the governments, the donors, the macro development banks, the civil society organizations. We need everybody. It's not a space where just one person is going to do it. So the finance is there, and it will take all sorts of forms to context-specific. So you can't have a blanket to fit everybody. It has to be context-specific and have everybody for complementarities and coherence in ensuring we get to net zero and highly adaptive.
Thank you so much. Firdaus?
Well, from my side, I would like to recall the call that made Dr. Sultan, the president of the COP in the UN General Assembly, about unity. And I believe that this unity is necessary and it has to be locally efficient. This would be my takeaway. It has to go through a transformation of the model, the financing model as well.
Thank you. Jamila?
Et pour le
I don't have a
transport,
hope, but I just want to maybe give a bit of
les
what we're
finances.
hoping to land by COP28. First of all, there will be the local climate leaders, climate action
Je peux
summit for
pas
subnational governments
dire
for
trop,
the
mais
first time alongside the world leaders on the
va
first 2 days in COP,
faut
and this is really to elevate the
utiliser
role of cities.
le
So
CAP
the opportunity is
28
to bring in the MENA region players, and I think
pour
everybody on this panel is a key
parler
player. So maybe bring in your collaborators to take this as a moment to say, okay,
les
what
rôles,
has worked, what do we need
les
to do
rôles
in the coming years, for a convening moment.
des pays
There's also the
et
GST,
des
which a lot of
gouvernements
people have
et
been hearing about if
d'organisations.
you're working in the climate space. So one thing that the high-level champion,
GST
Her Excellency Razan Mubarak and Dr. Mohammed
est trop
in their
que
technical submission and in the final submission
et
on behalf of the
côté
non-state actors is to highlight the enablers required, and we are
de lui.
collaborating with the LGMA
Donc,
constituency to gather these
Madame
demands so
Razan
that it's
et
taken then to the world leaders for consideration. And finally, there is this working group now trying to create a coalition
Et comme ça,
of
on
cities
va
working with national governments.
trouver
An example
les
of that.
personnes
It's really an invitation to join hands on these
qui
efforts
dit
and also bring
non
in your calls to
dans
action
cette
so that they're taken forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
dans cette
بدي أقول أنه في عام 2024 ستكون الانطلاقة الحقيقية بعد الاعتماد من صندوق المناخ الأخضر في مشاريع استراتيجية عملاقة يستفيد منها القطاع الخاص والبلديات، وليس على مستوى الأردن على فكرة، كمان احنا نقدر نمول على مستوى الوطن العربي ومنطقة الشرق الأوسط كمان، لأنه معتمدين في هذه المنطقة كاملة من خلال أنهم يضعوا لنا وديعة واحنا نعيد اقراضها وبسعر فائده منخفض جدا جدا اللي هو 1.5 فقط كلفه الاقراض، وراح تستفيد منها القطاع الخاص والبلديات، وهي بارقه امل امام القطاع الخاص لكي يستثمر في المشاريع التي على اللونج رن، مشاريع استراتيجيه ضمن اهداف التي وضعتها الحكومه والاهداف الوطنيه العليا.
شكرا. جون.
For myself, maybe a couple of points. One is public sector leadership, but also mobilizing private actors to do their part, all the way from subnationals to private sector to communities. Very, very important. So really how to think about it. And this is maybe a good segue to also introduce a report that World Bank is launching at 2 p.m. on vibrant cities, where we talk about how governments can build legitimacy and trust, and how that is the foundations for really taking a consolidated action towards resilience, climate, and so on and so forth. So that's one. The players, everybody's playing a part. The second is finance is linked to a lot of different issues: inclusion, growth, resilience, you know, and everything you can think. And the city is a space, right? And urban areas is a space. And those linkages needs to be addressed. So we cannot just talk about growth without addressing affordability or even the most vulnerable populations.
Donc il y a beaucoup de choses qui
So I think it needs to come in again, a very integrated way, looking both spatially as well as sectorally, to make sure that people are not spatially excluded, economically excluded, and so on and so forth. That's how I would put it. Only then can we achieve some of the goals that we are thinking about. So just 2 points here.
Thank you so much.
What I want to say is that I believe cities are the leaders on the next step.
Merci.
So
Je voudrais
the climate change starts
que par
in some cities and in others in other cities. So we need to work on the local level more. We need to work together because cities alone will not be able to face the impact of climate change. Everybody should work together and the responsibility should be clear for everybody. On the organization level, I think that cities need to work on their institutionalizing climate change within their organization, because it's not just a side responsibility now. It is a main responsibility for cities. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you, our distinguished panel speakers and experts, for sharing those amazing insights. And I hope that our audience also benefited from the discussion. Before we close, I would like to invite Andy Deakin, Co-Managing Director at Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, to provide us with the closing remarks.
Le
Thank you so
chef
much.
de NDD. S'il vous plaît.
And good morning. Just in closing, would like to thank the list of partners that you see listed on the slide in the background, colleagues from multiple networks, UN agencies who have helped to kick this discussion off and bring this amazing panel together. This is really just the start of this conversation. Events like this are taking place at each of the regional climate weeks. So this is not a one-off. And the intent is to bring then together a series of very strong messages about subnational climate finance from multiple regions into those important discussions that Jamila referenced for COP28. And we really do see that as a key moment at subnational level. Really, this session was about unlocking finance. We've heard a little about barriers, but what I heard was also a lot about opportunities. And really in terms of building new partnerships, in terms of that alignment between local, regional and national level, opportunities to bring in the private sector and civil society. Then some of these approaches, there are leaders and we can learn from their examples. But as you've heard, cities and city networks are keen to learn and to be able to share and replicate those experiences. So all I would say is both keep an eye on how this agenda continues to develop, not only here for the MENA region, but across all regions of the world. And we look forward to bringing some of the messages and discussion points that you've heard today really into the heart of the discussion about responding to the global stocktake, addressing issues around means of implementation, adaptation and mitigation, and really working to drive forward the nationally determined contributions, national adaptation plans and long-term strategies to unlock finance at subnational level and to show how cities are leading the way, but to strengthen their hand in the delivery of that agenda. So I hope you'll join me in thanking both Naran for moderating, but also our expert panel, and for an excellent discussion this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Merci pour tout. Je vous remercie.